Okay, guys, and we're back with another episode of the Seth Solo Side Quest. I'm Seth from the Lonely Stoner podcast, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about the recent IBO Super Featherweight World Title fight that happened this past weekend in Nottingham. That was Anthony Cacade against Leigh Wood. Now, Kakachi got the stoppage after the Leigh Wood's corner threw in the towel after they saw he was badly rocked and had taken quite a bit of damage in that fight. As Kakachi was doing the cleaner work. It was competitive. Don't get it twisted. It wasn't like one guy was just walking through the other. Leigh Wood was definitely a live body. Definitely came to fight. And I wanted to talk a bit about Leigh Wood because he's a fighter with somewhat of an interesting career where I feel Leigh Wood has never really been considered at world level at featherweight or super featherweight. I don't think that's controversial to say at all. I think for the majority of his career, he's been fancied as a very good British level boxer who occasionally fancies himself at, continental / fringe world level, right? Unfortunately, Leigh Wood, he did have a couple of losses early on in his career, but it feels like he has sort of grown into his body a bit more, become a bit more comfortable in the ring. But even then, still, Leigh Wood, there is a cap on him. Like, Leigh Wood was never going to become... Like, you look at the top of the featherweight division now, I'm thinking, Nick Ball, Stephen Fulton, like these guys would run rings around a guy like Leigh Wood, realistically, in a 12-round championship fight, right? Especially if you're losing to the likes of Kakachi as well. Kakachi, in his own right, is no spring chicken, but has only got one loss in his record, so you would assume to an extent he's probably taken less damage. But Leigh Wood, he actually is quite respected as a puncher in these weight divisions. He's got quite a few knockouts. I think he had something like 26, 27 wins, 17 knockouts. He has got big power for this weight division, and you can see that the punches were definitely registering with Kakachi. Like, it wasn't, like I said, Kakachi didn't walk through Leigh Wood at all. I wouldn't say that. But Kakachi, when he had his moments, he made them count more, and it felt like he was sitting down on his punches more and committing a bit more, and that sort of showed the further on into the fight we got, as eventually Leigh Wood's corner threw the towel in, as they felt he was taking too much damage. For me, though, this fight, it's a really good example of how far boxing has come, where previously, if I would have said a guy like Leigh Wood, he fought at national level, never really could make it at world level. By the time he retired, he wouldn't be retiring a rich man. He'd retire with a decent, nice amount of money, but he wouldn't be retiring a rich man. Whereas now, boxing has come so far that he's managed to build up quite a good name for himself. Obviously, Leigh Wood in England and Kakachi in his own right in Ireland. He's managed to build up quite a good fan base for himself. So where you can have an event like this where there's no major world title on the line. I think it was an IBO title, which isn't one of the big four. No major world title on the line, but purely off these guys' brand recognition that they've created, because they're both veterans, both vets, been around for years now. They've been able to create, a brand for themselves where people in Nottingham, where Leigh Wood's from, see that the event's on and saying, wow, Leigh Wood's fighting, I'd love to see that. They buy a ticket. And now Leigh Wood, I imagine he would be retiring quite well off if he was to retire after that loss, which some would argue would be the right thing to do. If he was to retire after that loss, I no doubt he got paid handsomely in that fight. I don't doubt for a second. Because I don't know if it was a sellout, because I don't know the capacity, or if it was a sellout for that arena, but it felt full. It felt like there was a serious atmosphere there come the main event, where the crowd's chanting, he's one of our own for Leigh Wood. But that's going to be a really good name on Anthony Kakachi's record, though, having Leigh Wood on there. Because, like I said, Leigh Wood's been in there with, well, probably the biggest name he's faced, is the biggest name he's beat, to be fair, is in Michael Conland. I think he beat Conland. Yeah, I can't remember. I haven't got his record in front of me. But yeah. Yeah, like I said, a huge win for Kakachi. I think it could be the sort of thing that maybe could push Kakachi into conversations with one of the big four featherweight champions or super featherweight champions, and maybe get a unification bout. Maybe. Who knows? But yeah, be curious to know what you guys thought of the fight, and if you think it was a right stoppage from Leigh Wood's corner. But yeah, another episode of the Seth Solo Side Quest in the bag, and I'm out. Peace.